Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. And my guest this week is Jan, and she runs the Etsy shop Handmade, Howling, Cowls. And Jan has a really interesting journey on Etsy, and so I'm glad to have her on the podcast. Jan, welcome to the podcast, and hello.
Hi, Ijama.
Thank you so much for being my guest.
You're welcome.
Okay, so before we start, can you tell us a little bit about you and just how you found Etsy?
Yeah, how I found that what I remember about Etsy is probably about 10 years ago. I had been on a trip to France, and somewhere I found this weird beaded ring thing. And at the time I was not one for getting like big colorful items, and I've since evolved and now I love big colorful items, but I had so I got this ring, and when I came back and I was wearing it to work, somebody said to me, "Oh, that looks like something you would have found on Etsy. That looks like something you would have bought on Etsy."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, Etsy? It's like the same time, it's like the first time you hear Craigslist, you're like, Craigslist?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, Etsy, and then I checked it out, and I thought it was cool. I did not do a lot of I wasn't doing a lot of online buying at the time, so I didn't do a lot of searching for things until I would say about 2013, 2014, which is when I started realizing that I could find one-of-a-kind gifts, unique art, and a lot of my gifting, I would say, or after 2012, a lot of my gifting started, I would source the gifts for people primarily from Etsy.
Oh, great. So then you became a buyer first.
Oh yeah, I became a buyer, and I actually had an Etsy wedding, we like to call it. I married my wife in January of 2016, and we had a destination wedding to Key West, and just about everything that went into that wedding was sourced on Etsy, and it Etsy made good money on me in 2015, 2016. But what was wonderful was it was unique. People who went to the wedding felt that it was not cookie cutter at all.
Right.
It was very unique to who we were. It was a small wedding, or like 30 people there. We were able to pay a lot of individual attention to our guests, and who they were, and celebrate their being able to be with us, and yeah, Etsy was wonderful for that, for finding these small one-of-a-kind doodads that would just put the finishing touch on an experience.
Yeah, I know. So a number of people who that's how they first discovered Etsy. That their first encounter with Etsy was planning their weddings, and then something happened, and then they started to look at Etsy differently as more of an income earner for them. So what was your journey? What was the turning point that took you from buyer to seller?
Well, the turning point for me was it was right after that wedding. I came back, and I think like 3 days after I got laid off my job of I'd been there for 13 years, and it was it was good. It was I had been with the same company for a really, really long time, and I probably was past my expiration date, as we like to say, but yeah, I was able to start finding contract work on the side pretty quickly, and just kind of cobbled together my own business for professional services And I had some things that I'd made, and I've been making since I was a child. I really, really, really got back into it 2006, 2007, knitting and crocheting. And people would always say, "Oh, you should sell that on Etsy," or "Oh, you should sell that.
Hmm.
People would buy that," And of course, people have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Um, some of us out there are laughing right now
Yes.
because we know.
Like, sure, I'll do
But
that.
yeah, it's that easy. So yeah, one of the I started selling in 2016, and initially I was selling items that were when I did I was like doing the math. I was like, what's the value of this? What's the value of that? How many
Hmm.
hours am I putting into it? I was being very scientific about it, but I would put it up in it, like the item would list for $500 and $500, $600. And I was doing nothing to promote my shop. And, I just kind of in my head had this thing that, you put it on Etsy, people come. And I really realized with those few listings that it wasn't quite like that.
Hmm.
And then turned the corner into 2017, my contract work started drying up. And I was part of that pussy hat, movement where I started making the same thing over and over again, but with different yarns. And I was like, wow, I really, 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 really like this.
Sorry,
So,
1 second, Jan. What's the pussy hat movement?
oh my goodness. So so there was the Women's March in DC in January of 2017. I think it was the day after the Trump inauguration,
Okay.
and there were pink hats that people were wearing
Oh, okay.
to it is, yeah, this is kind of on a political side, but and I don't, my shop is not political in any way, shape, or form, but because of that political endeavor,
Hmm.
making hats for people. I live very close to Washington, D.C. I had lots of people who were going. I made hats for them, and I discovered that I had I really, as long as I was using different yarn, I didn't mind doing the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
And I was like, but at the same time, I didn't feel really comfortable, selling. I did sell a couple of those, but I didn't feel super comfortable with it.
Hmm.
But then I also, over the past year, adopted a greyhound. And greyhounds have very low body fat, and they need to be kept warm. And so I had started making cowls, like tapered cowls for the greyhound. Initially I was just making tubes that were like the same at the neck entrance as the chest entrance, and that would just kind of sit on his neck and not really do anything except be cute. Those are really, really cute. But what I started doing was playing around with ways to make those so that the design tapered out at the bottom and kind of encircled his chest.
Right.
And then
So
was
wider at the
there
chest
up.
area and slimmer on the
Yeah.
neck. Yeah.
Yeah. So I came up with that design on my own, and my contract work started drying up, and I was like, well, I wonder if I could turn this into something full time. And I started listening to a million podcasts about, online marketing and marketing through Etsy. One of the first ones I found was yours. And I have to tell you that I probably wouldn't be talking. Well, obviously I wouldn't be talking to you if you weren't doing this, but but just the breadth of folks that your podcast covered was really wonderful, in that, there are people who are like 6-figure sellers, and there are people who are, just getting up and running, and then somewhere in between. So that, that let me know that there was I could fit,
Oh,
I
good.
could try this, and I didn't, it let me know the range of opportunity that could be out there.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So now you're strictly selling the cowls for dogs.
Correct.
Okay. So have you chosen to go the route of niching down to one particular item so that you become known for that item? Is that part of a deliberate marketing strategy, or is it more so because you want to be able to scale that on some level?
Well, I think both. One is that because of the math, unfortunately, because of the way costing is and pricing with unique handmade items, there really is not the profit is just not there. Like, I kept trying to figure out, how do I price these? How do I price these? And I would come up against formulas that people were using for soap making or people were using for jewelry making. And I would apply those formulas and the end cost would be like $200 for my items. And I had to say, is this okay? And I just decided that it is okay. I am going to be probably one of the more high-priced vendors out there, and if not the highest price in the niche, but I am going to do this one thing, and I am going to do it so good, darn it. And the other thing that really inspires me is, just how much our animals and mean to us. And I don't want to single out dogs because I've got 4 cats as well as 2 dogs, and and it's all good. I mean, I know I have a sister-in-law who has like a deep soul connection with her guinea pig. So it's just that the person animal connection is, I think it's really a important break for us in our life with technology. It's such a simple connection, and I love celebrating that. I love, that I would be making something for, even if there's not a particular dog that I'm making it for while I'm making it, I'm thinking about that dog. I'm thinking about the dog mom or the dog daddies or, whoever. And I'm thinking about that bond between the people who love that animal and the kind of one of a kind item that I'm making to celebrate that bond and to like kind of make it visual.
And that makes sense, because I read some of the reviews that people who have purchased from you left, and it sounds like most people can get that, or they feel that when they get the final product from you. So that's always very good. And the other question I was going to ask, one thing you mentioned was pricing, which is a big deal for selling on Etsy, and especially for handmade sellers. Because you said initially when you priced it out, the price, was in the hundreds of dollars, like 500 or even 200. And we know that almost it would be hard to to sell those on a large scale if that was the pricing that you used. So I have 2 questions on that. One was, how did you develop your own pricing structure that worked for the products you were making? Because like you said, and I know if you look on the internet or even on Etsy, you'll see that a lot of the pricing calculations do tend to be for things like jewelry or cosmetics like soap and what have you. So when you make something that doesn't quite fit into that category, you have to get a bit more creative. And then the other question I have is, did you start from deciding how much you wanted to make? So did you start with your end goal in mind and then work your way backwards just to make sure that what you're doing and the time you're spending on growing your business on Etsy and off, and we'll talk about what you're doing off Etsy as well, would actually be able to produce a livable income?
Well, sometimes I look up at the sky and I say, God, why did you curse me with a talent that for which there is so little monetary compensation.
Yeah.
It's and it's a huge this whole adventure has been a huge wake up call for me because having come out of the corporate world where I made a really, really good salary for, I'm not going to say, no work or whatever, but going from, drawing a really comfortable paycheck
Mm-hmm.
in a professional job to counting nickels and dimes
Yeah.
it's been great because it's like kind of slapped me back into the reality of what it is to have to earn an income to support yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to think that Howling Cowls could eventually scale into something like that. That would be ideal. I'm not sure what path that would take though, because really it's just it's such a small profit margin.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have done for the pricing that I have come up with, I'm writing a series of blog posts, and they're covering it's a 5-part series, and I've written parts 1 through 3 so far. Parts 4 and 5 will follow, but that just kind of goes into the different aspects of how I've come up with the pricing that I've got. And I will say that there are some gymnastics that I wasn't like some mathematical gymnastics. I wasn't super comfortable with, like this times a difficulty factor of this times this. But but I was like, how else am I really gonna account for this? So the one thing that I heard loud and clear with folks though, and the one mistake that I didn't want to make, was that I did know, especially from working in having a professional career where I was able to work with my brain and my hands, and each dollar wasn't something I had to wonder about or really think about.
Yeah.
The one thing that I took into consideration with pricing was there was no way I was going to underprice just to like make up the costs of things, because I think to me that just does a disservice to people who are out there with, I am looking for another job right now. I am hoping that I find something professional and that I'm able to keep Howling Cowls going as a side gig that maybe someday I can grow into a full-time gig. But I really don't want to undercut the folks who are out there that maybe this skill is all they've got, and that this is, and they need to make a livable wage doing this. Well, if I came in and sold something for $5, and it was nicer materials and incredible workmanship, and I'm selling it for $5, and they're trying to sell something quite fairly for $20, that there's so much of that. I find a lot of that in Etsy, and one of the reasons I'm writing this blog series is maybe people will read it and they will take into consideration, especially with hand knits and crocheting, what kind of factors should go into their pricing.
Yeah. And just so if anyone who wants to check that out, you can find that on handmadehowlingcowls.com. I will link to that, and that's where Jan blogs. Is that that's the right URL, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my Etsy shop is Handmade Howling Cowls, and then on the internet, that Handmade Howling Cowls takes you to a Shopify site, and I have a Shopify site that basically has the same thing as my Etsy site. Actually, Etsy, I have a bit more on Etsy, but the Shopify site allows me a blog feature, and so I went ahead and started just blogging there.
And that's a good idea.
And that's in the main menu for for handmadehowlingcowls.com, there'll be a main menu, and the blog is one of the items there.
Okay. And I think that's a great idea to blog because it helps to pull in traffic. So right now you're doing this, you're focusing on growing Handmade Howling Cowls. What does your typical day look like? How do you split your time between your Etsy shop, blogging, also running your Shopify shop as well, and anything else that you're doing to try and get your business the momentum that it needs, especially,
Right.
As a starting, still relatively new business?
Right. So, when I'm stressed, I make things, and I'm stressed a lot now, so I do a lot of making. But it's summertime, Christmas is coming, et cetera, et cetera. One of my favorite things that I'm really grateful for is you can take marketing into your own hands now. So I really am trying to pay attention to social media. Like, we have an Instagram presence, we have a Facebook presence. And I say we, I mean me and my, and my sisters who are holding me up here. I think that and I try to drive traffic to both shops through Facebook and Instagram. I'm not much of a Twitter user. I'm trying to get a little bit better, but I've found, and actually a lot of the resources that I use are folks I found through the Etsy Conversations podcast, like Tammy Cannon. I think she's wonderful. Like her little Insta Sprint challenge that she's having right now in July of 2017 is, it's really helping me understand the world of Instagram and Instagram marketing, especially, it's wonderful to do that in the summer where I can kind of get a routine down and maybe that will go not on autopilot, but I won't be learning the ropes during the holidays,
the busy
which is
selling
when I
season.
really do hope, when I do hope to see some sales.
Okay. And so one question I have for you, I'm looking at your listings and I noticed that on some of them you have shipping included and then others not. And
that's a mistake.
Did you say that's a mistake?
That's a mistake.
Okay. Why?
Because I did not realize that is. I'm glad you told me that, Ijama, and I'm going to go back and I am going to look at it. Shipping is going to be extra on my items. I'm not planning to include shipping.
Okay.
Shipping will be an extra fee.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad I asked that because I was yeah, because I was going to say, well, how does that strategy work?
That strategy does not work.
Doesn't work. Okay. All right. Good to know for anyone who's listening.
Yep, I will be going through and checking my listings. Thank you very much.
Yes, and a number of them do have that. And the reason I was going to ask was I used to sell on eBay, and they, on eBay they encourage you to include shipping because, so it will be an easier sale and buying process for the buyer. But the downside is you have to build the shipping cost somewhere. Right. Either into your product price or you eat that cost. And, I tried it. And for me, I didn't like it. I just felt better charging for shipping and letting people see what the actual product cost was and deciding if they were willing to pay to get that product.
Yeah. And I agree. And that is, I'm thinking if someone's going to go be in the, if they're looking for something special enough that it is, it's going to be something that costs them between $50 and $100, and it's going to be a keepsake, a special item, that the shipping is, it's not like they're doing that every day. Like if I'm buying Q-tips every day, I'm going to want shipping built into that. But if I'm buying something on a special basis, I'm much more comfortable with the added shipping.
Okay. All right. So going back to what you're doing outside of Etsy, I know that in addition to having a Shopify shop, you also have been accepted into Handmade at Amazon, have you started to use that venue to sell as well? Or right now, are you taking it one platform at a time?
I was really excited to get accepted into Handmade at Amazon, and then I tried listing, and it was not super intuitive. I have had some exchanges with folks there because they've said that they want to expand the category that I'm in, which is pet supplies. They want to expand that for Amazon at Handmade, but we haven't really been able to connect in order to work out some of my some of the glitches that I'm running into, which are probably glitches in my head and my practice. It's not their system. It's just I have to learn to bend to what they need or what they're expecting with their listing system. But I am hoping to, bite off that bit of the bagel in the next, couple months.
Okay.
And have stuff up on that platform as well by Christmas.
Okay. Now, with Handmade at Amazon, do they give you a specific period of time to open up your shop and become an active seller? Otherwise, they revoke the invitation. And I ask this only because I know, there are many different selling platforms on Amazon other than just Amazon.com. And I don't know if everyone is aware of it, but so there's the main Amazon everyone knows about. Then there's Handmade at Amazon, which is their handmade platform. Then there's Merch at Amazon, which is their print on demand. So if you do graphic design and you can make designs for t-shirts, that's what Merch is all about. And so I sell on Merch, but with Merch, when you get accepted, there's an acceptance, you have to apply, and then you wait for them to accept you or reject you. And then when you get accepted, you have a window of time where you have to start selling. You have to actually put designs up for sale. And then your designs have to actually sell to stay in the program. Otherwise, if your designs don't sell, like within, I think it's 120 days, which is, I think 3 months. No, that's 90 days. I think they give you 4 months to make a sale. Otherwise, then they kick you out of the program. Is Handmade like that? Is there a time clock that they have that you have to stick to?
There may be, but I'm not aware of it. When I got accepted into the program, they send you some beautiful like informational guides, and I went through those pretty carefully. And one was just, like an overview of selling on Amazon, and the other one was a little bit more specific to how do you list items. And I went through it, and it still didn't make complete sense to me. I think I have 2 items that are listed for sale. I was able to get 2 items through, but I have 70. I'd like to have 70 more.
Listed.
I have not been getting emails from them that there is any kind of a clock that is ticking, and I don't recall reading that there was any kind of thing. But I think they probably, and I probably would do this too if I was that kind of a platform. I think that that they probably have slightly different rules for each different, depending on the competitiveness of each marketplace, because I think that, it's like jewelry making is crowded. Like there's a wait list to get on Amazon with Handmade at Amazon with jewelry making or handmade jewelry. But I think they're begging for the pet category to get filled up. So peeps out there, apply.
And for anyone who wants to apply to the pet category, does that include anything that's made for pets, or do they have to be yarn creation, or just anything that's geared towards pets?
Yeah, like if you were making a wooden feeding bowl, like an elevated, like if you were making a wood bowl or a wood stand to feed, your dogs, or if you were hand making one of a kind whatevers, if it had to do with pets, I think right now that you can get in. It's when you apply for Handmade at Amazon, they do put you through an application process, which I had heard it was really onerous, and I found that it wasn't. And again, that might just be because the category that I'm in
Yeah.
is not a crowded category for
Yeah.
them. But I had like put aside 2 hours for this application, and I was done in like 25 minutes. And then I was like, everybody's got to like my Etsy shop so that Amazon approves me. And then like 15 minutes later, I get this thing from Amazon saying, you've been approved,
Oh, wow.
So it was actually, I was like, whoa. And then I tried to list on there, and I found it to be, I didn't find it to be as intuitive as Etsy as far as getting my listings up. So again, that's a beast I need to tackle, but that's probably something I'm going to do in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Now, speaking of listing being intuitive, back to Etsy, did you use the old listing manager? I don't remember if it had a different name. And now do you use the new one? And what do you find are the differences? And is it a better selling or rather listing experience now for you with the new listing manager?
I didn't list I am aware that there was kind of a changeover. And but I think that the bulk of my listings have gone up since May of 2000, actually June of 2017. So I think that I've pretty much been using the listing manager that is new. So there's not a real like learning curve there for me.
Okay.
That I don't have that old one that I'm comparing it to.
Okay. And regarding other Etsy tools, how do you make use of, if at all, the tools that are available, like the stats? Do you go into your stats and look at them and then make adjustments based on the information you get in there, or have you not yet had a chance to jump into that?
I know that is there, and I've read about it. I think that if I did a deep dive right now, what with it being summer and it's not gifting season, and what I'm selling is, it's a little bit more appropriate for cold weather. Although most of what I list is the signature items that I'm listing now, the yarn that I'm using. Oh my God, Ijama, it's like jewelry. It's this hand painted yarn, and the artist who made it just closed up her shop like early at the end of Christmas of 2016. She stopped producing yarn after that. There are people around the yarn world who are crying because she just put color combinations together that were so breathtaking and beautiful, and the quality of the yarn that she used, her name was Colinette, and the quality of the yarn that she used was amazing. Well, I've loved her yarn ever since I discovered it, and I hoard it. And so now I'm just going through my stash to make these items. And yeah, it's like some of them are just perfect for weddings. Like if I had seen something like that, so the one yarn that I'm using right now is mostly cotton and rayon. It's a ribbon yarn, and then it shimmers, it catches light. It almost looks like jewelry, the finished product. And we're calling products that are made of that yarn signature, because I have so much of that yarn, and many, 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 many different colors of it. So but yeah, it's like it's the other time for this that I would see that someone would be like, oh yeah, I'd like to have something special for my dog to wear is, are they throwing it a birthday party, or a lot of times people are including their dogs in their wedding. We did that. We included our dog in our wedding, and these Cowls would fit really nicely. And and the idea of custom making something, somebody getting in touch with me and saying, actually I have an idea for this. I see that you're offering that. It's not quite what I want.
Yeah.
Let me know. y- how could we make something? I'd love to get into that
Oh yeah.
part of business too. Is
Yeah.
customizations, I think, are going to be the part of this that feed my soul. I think the part of it where I'm dealing with scalability and how do I find labor, and all the items that I list, I'm trying to make sure that at least someone could make an item if they sat down end to end and had decent skills and
Mhm.
were a good craft person, that they'd make about $20 an hour doing it. Um so that's, I kind of price my labor right around that.
Okay. And
And
that's
um,
reasonable.
yeah.
I want to ask about something you mentioned. So one of the suppliers that you used or used to use has now gone out of business. How do you deal with, and how would you recommend other makers deal with losing a supplier, especially for if it's for a supply that is unique and one of a kind and really an integral
Yeah.
part of what you're making and selling? That has to throw you off as a maker yourself, because then your product line is going to be affected by that. So how right now you have a stash, so you're good, but eventually, hopefully, that will run out one day.
Right.
And so how are you planning for that time?
One of the amazing things about yarn, and I could go on and on and on and on about this, but one of the wonderful things about yarn is there's so many different artists. And Colinette she was on she's out of Wales in the UK, and she kind of started doing this, I think, even in the late 70s, early 80s. And I even have a friend who remembers her selling her hand painted yarn in the flower market at Covent Garden
Oh,
in
wow.
London.
Yeah.
And so, but since then, there have been, even if you go on Etsy, you can find there's so many people who have found that they can take their love of color and texture, and they're these amazing yarn painters. There are yarn artists out there, I'm telling you.
Huh.
People who will put color combinations together that you're like, why didn't I think of that? Why haven't I seen that before? And um it's it's amazing. I will there One of the reasons I'm so happy to kind of get into this is, yes, I love the stuff that Colinette produced, and I have quite a bit of it, but I am always going to be looking for new people to work with,
Hmm.
because again, the things that I'm making, I'm not looking to make a cookie cutter item.
Yeah.
I'm looking to make something that is not quite like anything else that's out there.
Yes.
And there are tons and tons of yarn artists on Etsy that
Yeah.
I would love to establish a relationship with to do that.
And for you, I know it's more than just that, because you also have a goal to help promote yarn entrepreneurs and people
Hmm.
who create with yarn.
Hmm.
Um, you're, I almost want to say you're starting, or you want to start a movement where,
The pricing movement.
yeah, the pricing movement. So, Jan, one of the things I really like in your shop is your photography. I think it's absolutely stunning. It looks so professional. Let's talk about that. How do you get your photography done? How much effort goes into setting up and doing what you do just to get these pictures up there?
Jama, this is where I am like blessed beyond blessed, because my brother had the good sense to marry a woman who is a really great amateur photographer, who loves animals and who has a sense of style that is just, it's out the roof. She's amazing. Her name is Gina, and she actually has a shop on Etsy as well, and it's the Opportunity, PAW, um, op OPPAW Tunity shop.
Yes.
On Etsy, where you'll find more pictures of those models and some of
Mhm.
the necklaces. she does the pictures, and a couple of the pictures I'm able to do, like the some of the product shots, but she's the one that has the way with the dogs, and she has these dogs, and she has been after me for about 8 years to like knit and crochet stuff for her dog. So like once I capitulated, like towards the beginning of this year, she was like, "Oh my God, you're." She was in hog heaven. So
Oh,
she loves doing this stuff, and so she's doing it for me now. I mean, again, I'm trying to price things so that if this does take off and there are sales worth noting, that I would be able to compensate her for
yeah.
them. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, photography is a huge.
Oh, it's huge, and yours does stand out. And I will link to Gina's shop. It's opportunity.
Yeah.
That's cute. And I'll have a link to it so anyone can hop over and take a look at what she's doing on Etsy. And one of the things I know I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I feel like there's a niche for someone who wants to build a business complementary to selling on Etsy. If you have the equipment and the skill, is photography for Etsy sellers.
You know, I'm
Because
trying to encourage her to maybe think about that,
yeah.
but Gina.
Yes, no,
But
it
she
would be
has
so
an
huge.
eye for it. Like
Yeah.
you walk through her house and it's just like she can take like 5 ordinary objects, put them on a wooden tabletop, arrange them, and you're looking at it and you're going, it's a tableau. You know, it's like everyday art. She's
Yeah.
super gifted that way.
Yes. Yes,
Um
that's great because I mean, yeah, she could do that for I mean, just that alone would be successful. But I find that a
yeah. If
lot of
anybody
people who
listening to
have
this
that
is like is looking for someone, hit me up because I don't think she's far from taking the plunge into doing this, and her photography is really good,
yeah.
and it's just so amazing. Like over the past, um, I'd say 4 or 5 months since we've really been doubling down on this, and we'll have days that are photo shoots. She lives about 3 hours away, so I'll drive down there for a couple days, and we'll
Okay.
do this massive photo shoot, and then drive back up. But just between the two of us, I'm the one who gets the stuff online, so I take her images and then I put it through Canva,
Mm.
so that I process the images so that they're a little bit so that they're uniform. But between the two of us, like my formatting and processing of the images has, I mean, I've learned leaps and bounds just in the last few months. And her photography, she's seeing what works and what doesn't work
Yeah.
with layout and with lighting, especially. So.
Yes. And for anyone who is considering this and thinking that geography might be a what do you call it, a barrier, it's not really, because there are people on Instagram that are making a living, if or close to a living, doing this. All you have to do is ship the products that you want
Right.
pictured to the photographer. In Jan's case, you get to drive there and hang out with your brother and sister-in-law, so that's
Right.
even more fun. But
Yeah.
it's so doable, and I wish I had an eye, because I would completely just throw myself into that and just do photography. And in most cases you get the product back. They just take the pictures and then they send it back to you, and then you get your image files and whatnot. I think it would be I think it could be very profitable, but I can only wish that could be me. Now, let's talk about your creative process. When you get an idea for a new product, typically how long does it take you from idea to actually creating to getting it up in your Etsy shop?
It took me a long time to so right now I'm just doing a cowl, but I have had the idea for a bandana because so many people like to put bandanas on their
Yes.
animals. And so I've come up with I I am in the process now of refining what I'm going to call the teeny bandini. So there'll be
Oh,
the Howling cowl and the teeny bandini, and I'm just figuring out, I'm actually trying to like figure out the finalization in pricing, like just in the different sizes of the items, like how to
Mhm.
standardize them to best, have things that are ready to go for folks. I mean, anytime anybody wants something custom, get in touch with me. We'll, uh, we'll, I can do
Work
that.
around it.
But
Yeah.
but just in terms of what's shown on Etsy, most of that is ready to go.
Okay.
And the teeny bandinis, they'll go up. They'll be up in the next few months. But yeah, that's taken about 3 or 4 months just to,
Wow.
figure out, okay, what's good sizing for this,
Yeah.
what's the right kind of yarn to use for this, and things like that. So
Wow.
so
Now,
it does take a while.
yeah.
I
And that
mean,
makes sense
faster
when you're
people can
thinking of
do
an
it
entire
faster.
product line. It's a whole new
Yeah.
product line. And do you plan to sell it in Handmade Howling Cowls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. The other question I had for you was, so you seem to have come on Etsy, and I'm so impressed because it looks like you did a lot of research, and you have your act together, and it hasn't been that long. What were some of the specific steps you took in preparing to open your shop, and then when you launched, that you think have just helped to set you up well, that somebody else who is still maybe in the planning stages can
I
follow?
listened to your
Oh,
entire back catalog, Ajama. I listened to Etsy conversations, and I was just so grateful that so many people were willing to, say, this is where I, ran into errors, and this is
yes.
where so I knew right away, like I knew within like listening to, five, photography is key for online
Mm-hmm.
selling, and and that, technically there were going to be some glitches with, understanding how the listing process works, and getting familiar with that, and that, you just keep trying,
Yes. Yeah.
so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I didn't pay Jan to say that, I promise. What's a piece of advice that you would give to someone who is in the beginning stages? They already have their new shop. Maybe sales aren't pouring in just yet. What would you tell that person is an important thing to focus on now, just to, stay in the race?
I think anybody, I don't know when this is going to air, but I think that if you really are attempting this with any kind of a thought of, making a profit, or depending on the money somehow in your life, depending on the money that you get from the sales in Etsy, that whether it's like a side thing to, you know this is it's paying, off a student loan, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
sell on Etsy until you pay off a student loan, or if it's something that you're able to turn into a full-time job. I think that the most important thing is, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Oh, yes. Ugh. And, actually, that's even good advice for me, too, because right now, I'm working on launching the membership site with the premium podcasts. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so particular about things, like I want things to be a certain way. I want the site to look a certain way. I want to present it a certain way. I want people to be able to do X, Y, and Z
Mm-hmm.
exactly, how I have it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I get caught up just, focusing on trying to get it exactly the way I see it in my head, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing might be not not realistic, but letting go of how I envision it is hard for me. I'm realizing,
Right,
I
right,
just need to say
right,
it's okay. Just, if people don't like it, then change it, but let people tell you it's not perfect.
right,
So yeah,
right.
that was good
Right.
advice for me.
Yeah, and the thing too is, I think the thing that, you know reality is one thing, but putting, reducing things down to 2 dimensions, to this flat dimension, and and getting things to present the way that, they create themselves in your brain, and then trying to do all the technical stuff to retain that vision and
Yes.
get it online. That is it. That I have to say that has been hard for me too, because I just I could go to the perfect place and spend a day on three details, and it just, but that's not what's going to get my stuff out there.
Yes.
What's going to get my ideas or my mission, or the good juju out there is going to be at some point being able to say, good enough.
Yeah.
I can tweak it later.
Yes. Oh, Jan. You're talking to me.
Yeah.
What's something you're doing right now as far as growing your business that you think is working really well?
I think paying attention to social media is working really, really well right now. The fact that with social media, it is a lot of work, and each different platform has its ins and outs, and things that they're all a little different, between Twitter to Facebook to Instagram to and there's others that just keep popping up, and I'm like, do I need to pay attention to this, or don't I need to pay attention to this? Like, but yeah, looking at those, and just refining, and I think, and what I'm hoping to have by the time September, October, November, and December roll around is I hope to have an actual calendar of marketing, where I'm not like just waking up in the morning and taking a picture of what I'm making that day and putting it on Instagram. I'm planning to have I'm planning to plan. And that's the other thing I can get lost in doing. I can plan to plan forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But get the calendar out, and schedule, try my hand at a marketing campaign, and it's going to be a bootstrap social media marketing campaign, and we'll see where it goes. But I did get a Shopify sale from going on Instagram and finding all the Greyhound people I could find, or all the Greyhounds I could find on Instagram, and liking them, and liking their friends, and really, getting to know that niche. And yeah, somebody that we friended each other on Instagram, and then she ended up going to the Shopify site, and she was my first Shopify sale. So I found that through Instagram. So I would have to say that, hopefully a little bit more of that is coming my way.
Now, not to throw yet another social media platform in the mix for you, and I don't know if you're of the school of thought that says be everywhere, so be on every platform you possibly can, or if you're selecting the ones that you enjoy and that are bringing you the most return, just focusing on those. But there's, and this is for anyone too who wants to explore this. Have you heard of Reddit?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I have heard of Reddit, but not as any kind of a promotional platform. I have heard of Reddit as like, you want to check out like all the victims of John Wayne Gacy or something, you go to Reddit. Or you want to check out conspiracy theories. Yeah, I have not I didn't and I also know that Serena Williams' fiance, her baby daddy, is one of the founders of Reddit. So that's about what I know about Reddit. And I've researched things, and Reddit strings have come up, and I've looked at them, but the way that they're visually placed, it doesn't it's not intuitive to my eye. So I haven't spent a lot of time, but I do have friends who have gotten into Reddit, and as I said about conspiracy theories and stuff, but they've been like, oh wow, it's like
Oh, okay.
they get on Reddit and it's like they come out 7 hours later rubbing their eyes, it's like a video game.
Okay. Well, yes, I know Reddit is good for that and known for that. But what you might not know is that there is an Etsy subreddit. And so a subreddit is just another, it's like a topic within,
Uh-huh.
Reddit. And there's
Uh-huh.
one that's completely devoted to all things Etsy. And
Wow.
once a week, every week, you get to actually just blatantly promote your shop. And it's a good way to get people linking back to your shop because, people go and they click on the links to see what you're selling. You can. So once a week, you get to promote a product that you want, to just announce to everyone about, or
Right.
just your shop in
I
general.
will work that into the calendar.
And
I
so
will work that
yeah,
into
and it
the
doesn't
calendar.
yes, you can go down many a rabbit hole on Reddit because so if you get into just the right subreddit, and yeah, you could be there for hours. So it can be a time suck, but if you go just directly to the Etsy one, and it's a good place to also get answers to questions and to help other people out too. It's a very
Okay.
active subreddit. And
Okay.
so something to just think about. Now, with regard to planning for your social media activities, there was a seller, or not was, she still is on there, that used to have social media calendars. And so every day of the month, she would tell you what to do, and where to post, and give you ideas of what to post. And if there was a particular, something day, like National XYZ, whatever day, she would say, use this hashtag and post on, this website, and then this social media platform. And then, you could link back to your shop or something like that. Or even if you don't link to your shop, if you come up in a search for that trending hashtag, and someone is interested in what you're doing, they would check out your profile and then go to your shop. And so for me, I bought that. I did one of the ones where it was just for that month. And for me, it was helpful because I was able to, it just got me active on social media,
Right.
and doing things, and across different platforms as well. And so if you're planning to like you said, you want to plan to, have a social media calendar, that's a good way to just get in there and get into the mix of it.
Yeah, that and I have to say that that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about, this whole experience is a lot of I'm also trying to document my process, what I'm going through here so that, like maybe my pricing formula is going to be something that people are going to be able to take away, or I'm going to be able to encapsulate that in something. But I love that other folks who have found, okay, this is my checklist. This checklist worked really well for me. Here for $3 is my checklist for you.
Yes, yes.
That there's tons of that out there, like the bookkeeping that I've been doing, and the and just like the planning for the different sections of the small business. I bought, like $20, $30 templates online, or on Etsy, just to find out, just to go through the questions of who is my ideal customer, and things like that. And so that there's lots of support material out there.
Yeah, there is. And unfortunately, I just looked up that Etsy shop where I bought the social media calendar planner, and she actually doesn't offer the monthly one anymore. So I'll link to what she does offer still. But I can't imagine it won't be as helpful as the one I bought in the past.
Right.
Okay. So I'll link to that. And do you have any specific tools that you use for selling on Etsy, or even your website on Shopify, anything in particular that you found particularly helpful that you don't mind sharing?
Well, I think that, knowing that Marmalade is out there for Etsy,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not making enough. It's kind of like a snake eat a tail thing right now because I have
Mm-hmm.
very few sales, so I don't have the money to really put into the support tools. So, but when I have a few more sales, I am going to be investing in Marmalade, just to understand that back end, or just to get an insight into how I can tag better, and how the Etsy universe, how I can show up better in the Etsy universe.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing the same thing with Shopify and Amazon, is whatever the tools are out there that help with search engine and retrieval of the site, anything that makes the site pop up.
Yeah.
As long as it, I want to be, I want it, I want my site to pop up when it's relevant. I don't want it to pop up in a,
Oh,
in
yeah.
a search for, oranges, but I do want, but if anybody's anywhere near close to the universe of, like dog collars, dog cowls, I would love to pop up. And so
Yeah.
I don't have the tools in place yet, but I think that eyeballs, getting the site impressed on eyeballs is going to be a big deal. So
Mm.
so that's probably where I will be concentrating my next tools, my next investments.
Yeah. And I'm always searching for new tools too. I found a website which I won't mention yet. It was just yesterday and I'm still checking it out. It looks really interesting that they have some tools that could be helpful, but I want to look into them a bit more as well. Jan, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
That's super easy. It's Jan, and my name is spelled with two N's, so it's JANN at howlingcowls.com, and that's HOWLINCOWLS. So it's Howlin without a G, and it's all one word, .com. You can find me, you can message me through Etsy. We have a Facebook group. I'm on Instagram. We're on Twitter. The blog. There's any, just think of Howling Cowls, put it into the search engine, whatever comes up, click whatever, and I'll be back in touch with you.
Yeah, you're one of the lucky ones. You were able to just own that phrase, Howling Cowls. I always tell people, if you know, and that's the good thing about planning ahead of time, is when you plan out your launching your business and your name and all that, you can capture everything on social media and domain names and what have you, which which is great. And that's so good for marketing because you're much easier to find, and then people know you as Howling Cowls. Howling Cowls is Jan. Anywhere you look, it's you pop up.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get a shop called Howling Cowls on Etsy. I think somebody had it, and then they just weren't using it. Mm-hmm. So Howling Cowls as the name of a shop on Etsy wasn't available, but I put the Handmade on there. Yeah. But Howling Cowls as a URL was available. So howlingcowls.com goes to the Etsy shop.
Okay. Oh, great. And then the Shopify URL is Handmade Howling Cowls.
Right.
And I'll link to that as well.
Kind of freaky because that's what the name of my Etsy shop is. I don't know if that kind of juxtaposition, if we're going to keep it like that, but for now,
that's what
it's the same. Yeah. We started charging the same on all the platforms, so it's not like you have to.
Okay. So I will link to everywhere that you can find Jan. I'll link to all of Jan's social media, and I'll also have her contact information in the blog post for this episode. Jan, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest and for sharing all that you did and sharing your journey. I know that someone listening will be able to relate to the journey that you're on, and it will be encouraging to someone. So thank you for taking the time out to share.
Ijama, thank you so much. This is an amazing, this is just an amazing resource that you've put together for folks. And sometimes there are just days when it's like you ask what an average day is like. Sometimes it's like, I need a job, so what can I do for Howling Cowls? And and sometimes it's like I can listen to a podcast, and sometimes some of us like start selling on Etsy from like a really not always the best places in our lives.
Right.
So having this kind of community and having this kind of a resource that you've taken it upon yourself to put out there is, I think you're the one that's gifted us. So I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. And I thank you for listening to this podcast, and I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.